Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Scranton Mayor Paige Cognetti.
Good afternoon, Scranton! Oh, it is such an incredible honor to be before you here today in this incredible, beautiful Scranton Cultural Center. It is incredible to be able to introduce Scranton to our nation. And guess what? President Joe Biden is here. Scranton is a small city with a big heart. Our city was built on entrepreneurship, hard work, union jobs, and family tradition. Qualities we value today and that are the roadmap for our success. Folks here in Scranton want a fair shot for their children, for their grandchildren. No one knows that better than our hometown president, Joe Biden. And no one is better suited to be leading our nation right now as we navigate an economy that continues to knock it out of the park globally, but it remains challenging for many households. Economic statistics show a U.S. economy that has bounced back from the pandemic shock, and we're firing on all cylinders. But households in Scranton are still feeling pressed. Seniors have trouble with rising utility costs. It's hard for parents to afford childcare. It's hard for young people to save for a home, and sometimes even to pay rent. President Biden knows this, and his investments in communities like Scranton are helping create jobs, start businesses, increase childcare options, decrease the cost of drugs like insulin, and expand access to health care. In Scranton, through the American Rescue Plan, we've invested $5 million in small businesses. We've included helping family businesses stay afloat by increasing wages and retain staff. And our city cannot grow without safe roads, bridges, and sustainable transportation. Through the bipartisan infrastructure law that only President Joe Biden could have shepherded through Congress. And with the help of our hometown Senator Bob Casey, Congressman Cartwright, and Governor Shapiro, Scranton is set to welcome Amtrak from Scranton to New York in just a few years. The train will open up our economy and unlock Scranton, northeastern Pennsylvania's potential. We'll grow, but we have to grow smart. Part of that smart growth is, unfortunately, anticipating where outside financial interests are going to try to get their share of our future. Predatory firms reduce services while adding costs. They hurt Scranton families, and they cut into our potential. In healthcare, housing, EMS, childcare, and more, we have to be aggressive in combating the forces that put profits over people. President Biden is taking on those interests for us. Scranton and small cities like ours all across the nation are revitalizing thanks to President Biden. Jobs are paying well, small businesses are starting up, unions are expanding, main streets are getting spruced up, and aging infrastructure rebuilt. Without deliberate, empathetic leadership from the highest office in our nation, this momentum could disappear. Joe Biden has never forgotten where he's from. He's been fighting for the American people, for Pennsylvania, for Scranton, his whole life. Now it's our job to help him so he can keep up that fight. And now it is my pleasure to introduce another person who is fighting for us every minute of every day, Governor Josh Shapiro.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. What's up, Scranton? How you doing? Y'all look good, and it is so good to be back in Scranton. It's great to be here in this beautiful center, and it is amazing to follow your extraordinary mayor, Mayor Paige Cognetti. She is doing a hell of a job and has been a great partner to me as we work to grow our economy, as we work to put more money back in folks' pockets, as we work to make sure that Scranton is a shining light not just here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but an example all across this great country. I want you to know it's great to be here with Mayor Cognetti, and it is even better to be here with Scranton's own President Joe Biden. You know, this is a guy who has never forgotten where he came from. He has never forgotten the people that he grew up with. Joe Biden grew up right here in Scranton. It's where he's from. And it's the people like those here in northeastern Pennsylvania that he fights for every single day as president. They're the people on his mind, and they are the people in his heart. Pennsylvania shaped Joe Biden, and now the values that he learned here, those are the values that are helping shape our nation. Those are the values that he is relying on when he seeks to lift up our fellow Americans. You know, the folks who work on our main streets and in our factories and in our union halls. We got any union members here? He fights for the folks that power our economy and the people who strengthen our community. Those are the people he's fighting for every day. And let me tell you something. Those are the people that President Biden and I take our cues from each and every day. Each of us are focused on cutting costs for folks all across Pennsylvania because we understand the challenges folks here in Scranton and all across Pennsylvania face. That's why I worked with Democrats and Republicans to deliver the largest targeted tax cut for seniors in nearly 20 years right here in Pennsylvania. We stood up for our seniors, and you know who else stood up for our seniors? Joe Biden stood up for our seniors because he lowered the cost of prescription drugs for millions of seniors all across the United States. He said that no senior should ever have to spend more than $2,000 out of pocket for their drug costs, and he capped the price of insulin at just $35 to make sure our seniors were looked after. We look out for our seniors here in Pennsylvania, and the president does all across this nation. We also look out for children and our families. You know, here in Pennsylvania, we expanded the child care tax credit beyond where it's ever been before. And you know what? President Biden and Senator Casey, Scranton's own, together are working to make sure that working families get an even larger tax cut from the federal government for working families across Pennsylvania, building on that progress that we've made. You know, I was proud before I was governor to serve as your attorney general. Back when I was attorney general, we took on all kinds of companies that were ripping off Pennsylvanians. I remember when we took on Marriott and Uber, who tried to screw over a bunch of Pennsylvanians with junk fees. Well, President Biden understands that big corporations hiding fees just to make an extra buck on your back, he knows that that is wrong. That's why he's taking them on, he's winning, and he's putting money back in your pockets every single day. You see, it's those Scranton values, those Pennsylvania values that stand up for the hardworking folks, not for those big, powerful corporate interests. Time and time again, Joe Biden has fought to put money back in the pockets of people who are out working hard every single day. And he's looking out for our well-being. We've got children in Pennsylvania today, when their moms turn on the tap, who are drinking water that doesn't have lead in it because Joe Biden made sure those water lines got replaced. He's looking out for our best interests. And every step of the way, he's remembered that replacing those water lines are critically important. But you know what else is important? The people who are doing the work replacing those water lines, building our roads, repairing our bridges, laying down fiber so everybody can be connected to the internet. He is making sure that the dignity of work is respected and the people doing that work earn a proper wage here in Pennsylvania and across the country. Those are Pennsylvania values, the kind of values that he has never forgotten. And let me tell you something. In this race for president, you could not have a clearer contrast between President Biden and Donald Trump. Donald Trump, let me tell you something. He doesn't share our values. He doesn't care about the working folks. No, he focuses on the rich and the powerful every day. Let me tell you a little story about how Donald Trump disrespects those who are working hard every day. Back when he was president, I was your attorney general. He tried to pass a rule at the federal level that literally would have taken tips away from waiters and waitresses and bartenders. Literally, you'd show up at the restaurant, you'd leave your tip, and the tip would go to the owner of the restaurant. And then he or she would decide whether the waiter, waitress, or bartender could get that. That was wrong. And we sued Donald Trump. And by the way, we won, and waiters, waitresses, and bartenders get to keep their hard-earned tips. I tell you that story because President Biden and I understand that the folks who are working that double shift, the folks who are serving the meals and serving the drinks, they deserve to be treated with respect. They deserve to be treated well by a president who wants to put forth a policy that lifts them up instead of trying to tear them down. Those are the people Joe Biden fights for every day. And you couldn't have a clearer contrast with the guy who's trying to take his job. So whether it's the folks who are laying that pipe or fixing that road, the folks who are waiting on us in our restaurants, the folks who are trying to keep us safe in our communities, it's President Joe Biden who has their backs every single day. Let me give you another example. I had the privilege to be in Philadelphia with the president not too long ago. He wanted to come to Philly, and he wanted to go to a fire station there. It's called Ladder 1, and it had shut down years earlier. And it shut down for a number of reasons, but primarily they couldn't meet their costs. They couldn't meet their financial obligations. That bothered the president. He remembered that. And when he came back to Philly that day, he came back with millions of dollars and the opportunity to reopen Ladder 1 in Philadelphia and make sure that community was safe and look out for the firefighters in that community. It bothered him that the community didn't have enough firefighters. It bothered him that the firefighters didn't have what they need. And quietly, our president made sure they were whole. Quietly, our president did the work behind the scenes. You see, Joe Biden understands firefighters aren't there for a phony photo op, which Donald Trump uses them for. They are there to keep us safe, and they deserve respect and dignity, and they deserve more money in their pockets. And Joe Biden has delivered that for them every step of the way. Listen, you're going to hear more from the president, but here's the bottom line. He shares our values. He's worked hard to cut costs and put money back in people's pockets. He's a president who is guided by working folks, guided by the people that fill our union halls and work in our restaurants and work in the hot sun on our roads to make sure that we can get to and from work safely. He's a guy who has never, ever forgotten where he comes from. His Scranton values inform him. His Scranton values inform our nation. And we are better off because of Joe Biden, and we've got a lot of work to do, my fellow Pennsylvanians, to make sure we deliver 4 more years to Scranton's own President Joe Biden. Thank you all very much. We got work to do, so let's get it done. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome special guest Amy McNulty.
Hello, I'm Amy McNulty, and I'm honored to stand before you today. My story, like many of yours, is one of perseverance and hope. It is the story of providing for a family and hoping to create a foundation for them to have a fulfilling future. My husband Michael and I dream of sending our daughters to college without being burdened with debt, so they can find fulfilling careers that allow them to purchase their own homes where they can create futures of their own. Shortly before our first daughter was born, we decided that Scranton would be the place where we would raise our family. We felt confident that we could afford a home, and we had a solid support system here. We purchased our starter home in 2010, just a block from where President Biden himself once called home. Our daughter Isla was a few months old, and we welcomed our second daughter Muriel just over a year later. We faced a lot of financial pressures as first-time homeowners with 2 young daughters, but we always stayed focused on love and cherished memories, dreaming of a brighter tomorrow. Now, 14 years later, we still live in that starter home. A few things have changed. Our girls are now 14 and 12. They've grown up, but our home hasn't gotten any bigger. Our one shower works extra hard these days, and there's a daily battle for time in there, the most unfortunate casualty being my husband. Michael and I both have careers in education. I was the first in my family to go to college, and now spend my days helping other first-generation students at my community college succeed. So for our family, there was never a question of whether our children would attend college if they want to, but there was always a question if we could afford it. As our girls get older, those financial pressures are still there. But thanks to President Biden's unwavering commitment to families like ours, for the first time in a long time, we are hopeful. When President Biden expanded the child tax credit, it put an extra $600 in our pocket every month. That meant a lot to us. Not only did it give us a little breathing room during the pandemic, it also let us glimpse a future where we could really start saving for our daughter's college education. Now we're thankful that President Biden is fighting to make that child tax credit permanent, so families like ours can keep saving and keep looking to the future. We're thankful that President Biden is fighting to make it easier for us to upgrade to a larger home that meets our needs. $10,000 easier, in fact, a game changer for families reaching for their first home or trading up from that first home as their family grows. And while other politicians push tax breaks for the super wealthy, who already have more than enough, we're thankful that President Biden is fighting to cut taxes for middle-income families like ours, so we can have enough to make the dreams for our daughters a reality. In short, it's pretty nice to have a president who sees the view from Scranton. Yes, yes. He is fighting for us and knows what it's like to grow up where we are. Other politicians who have not walked a mile in our shoes just can't understand what it's like. It's surreal to stand here today sharing our journey with you all, but it's with immense pride that I introduce a leader who understands the struggles of families like mine, who champions the aspirations of working class and middle-income America. It is my honor to introduce President Joe Biden.
Hello, Scranton. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think I should go home now. Except I'm already home. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please, take a seat if you have one. Amy, thank you for that introduction and for your work as an educator. You know, it's great to meet your family, including your husband, Michael, whose uncle, Jimmy McNulty, was the former mayor and grew up with me in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You know, thanks to the mayor, Paige, excuse me, I was going to talk about the old mayor, Paige Cognetti, for that welcome, and she's been incredible. She's been with me all along the way. It's always great to be with one of America's best governors, and I mean that sincerely, Josh Shapiro. He's the best. Stand up, guys. Get up. I think Josh and a lot of people are always tired of hearing me talk about Scranton, but you know, Scranton's a place that climbs into your heart, and it never leaves. I mean that sincerely. It's home that's a special thing that's in your heart. For me, it was 2446 North Washington Avenue, just a block away from Amy's house. We used to come back after morning mass to St. Paul's on Sundays. St. Clair's wasn't built until I had moved. And my grandfather, who worked for the newspaper, and my uncles would hold court around the kitchen table with a guy who was sort of the David Broder of the Pennsylvania Press, the Scranton Press. You think I'm kidding? It wasn't, but anyway. And he would, they'd come and have breakfast at the table, and a kid could wander around the table where the adults were sitting, but you could never sit at the table. And I'd walk up and stand next to my grandpa, and while they were having conversation, and they're talking about what was going on in the neighborhood. They talk about what was going on in the world. They're all learned men, and I learned a lot here in Scranton. I learned that money doesn't determine your worth. My grandfather would tell me, Joey, nobody's more worthy than you, and everyone's your equal. And that was I learned that no one's looking for a handout. All anybody wants is a fair shot at making, and they deserve a fair shot. My dad had a saying. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. You know, people like Donald Trump learned very different lessons. He learned the best way to get rich is inherited. Not a bad way. He learned that paying taxes was something people who work for a living did, not him. He learned that telling people you're fired was something to laugh about. I guess that's how you look at the world when you're in Park Avenue or Mar-a-Lago. But if you grew up in a place like Scranton, nobody handed you anything. You paid your taxes. You made sure being told you're fired wasn't entertainment. It was a nightmare that people worried about. And all I knew about the people like Trump who looked down on us were the people that haven't changed. They wouldn't welcome us in their homes and their clubs. Folks, where we come from matters. When I look at the economy, I don't see it through the eyes of Mar-a-Lago. I see it through the eyes of Scranton, and that's not hyperbole. That's a fact. Where honesty and decency matter. Where faith matters. Where family is everything. Where we grew up, knowing in our homes that Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built this country. And unions built the middle class. We know the best way to build an economy is from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, because when you do that, the poor have a ladder up, the middle class does well, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. There's a stark contrast from my opponent. He looks at the economy from Mar-a-Lago, where he and his rich friends embrace the failed trickle-down policies that have failed working families for more than 40 years. Scranton values, or Mar-a-Lago values. These are the competing visions for our economy, and they raise questions of fundamental fairness to the heart of this campaign that I want to talk to you about a little bit today. Folks, does anybody really think the present tax code is fair? Raise your hand if you think it's fair. I'm not joking. Well, neither do I. I'm a capitalist. If you're able to go out and make $1 million bucks, fine. That's okay. But just make sure you pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest in the things that make this country strong. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. For more than 40 years, our Republican friends have promised that the best way to grow the economy is from the top down. But here's what they don't tell you. It's never worked. The benefits don't trickle down. And the very wealthy pay less in taxes, and we have to borrow more and invest less in the things that families really need, from schools to hospitals, healthcare, roads, bridges, and so much more. Think what happens when the factory closes in Scranton or anywhere around the country, when the school is underfunded, when inequity grows larger and larger. It puts the middle class further and out of reach and rips the dignity and pride and hope out of communities all across the country, including right here in Pennsylvania. Folks, trickle-down economics failed the middle class. It failed America. And the truth is, Donald Trump embodies that failure. He wants to double down on trickle-down. His failure starts with his $2 trillion tax cut that overwhelmingly benefited the wealthiest and biggest corporations and exploded the federal debt when he was president. Donald Trump added more to the national debt than any president of the United States in a term in all of American history, more to the national debt. Meanwhile, when the pandemic hit, Trump failed the most basic duty any president owes the American people, a duty to care and a duty to respond. Remember when he told us, don't worry, this will all be over by Easter. Remember when he told us, literally, inject bleach. Bless me, Father. Look, think about it. Think about it. Because he failed to care, not only did people die, but millions of Americans lost their jobs, their homes, their livelihoods. On Trump's watch, in the 4 years he was president, we lost nearly 3 million jobs were lost. 275,000 of those jobs lost right here in Pennsylvania. In the Scranton area, Trump lost 17,400 jobs. 180,000 manufacturing jobs lost nationwide, including 37,000 manufacturing jobs right here in Pennsylvania. There are only 2 presidents on record in all of American history that left office with fewer jobs than when they entered office. Herbert Hoover, and yes, Donald Herbert Hoover Trump. Look, Trump's running again on the same failed trickle-down policies. Nothing's changed. Just a few months ago at a closed-door event in Mar-a-Lago, he told his millionaire and billionaire donors the following, this is a quote, "You're rich as hell, and we're going to give you tax cuts," end of quote. And then they all laughed about it. Not because they didn't think it would happen, because they knew it will happen if he's elected. How does that make me feel? How does it make you feel? How does it make the people I grew up with feel? I think it's outrageous. Trump wants to renew another round of billionaire tax breaks and corporate giveaways. And look, I come from the corporate state of the world, Delaware. I represented for 36 years. They're entitled to make a fair profit. It makes sense. There's more corporations incorporated in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. But this is ridiculous what's going on now. You know, there are about 1,000 billionaires in America. Do you know what the average federal tax rate for a billionaire is today in America? For real. 8.3%. That's how much federal tax. No, I'm serious. Not a joke. Far less than the vast majority of Americans pay in federal taxes. No billionaire should pay a lower tax rate than a teacher, a nurse, a sanitation worker. I mean it. And that tax break that he passed several years ago is about to expire. But Trump wants to give another billionaire tax break. Listen to what he says. Trump says his MAGA friends want to, quote, terminate, I love his terminology, terminate the Affordable Care Act. That would mean over 100 million Americans with pre-existing conditions who now have health care because of the Affordable Care Act would lose their coverage. 100 million. It means millions of young people be kicked off their parents' health care policies once they turn 26. The Affordable Care Act is paid for by a surtax on the very wealthy investment income. Trump wants to get rid of that, and as a consequence, would cost millions of Americans who lose coverage an average of additional $6,000 a year to maintain their health care. It would mean billionaires would get, as a consequence of not having to pay the tax anymore, another $3.5 million tax cut per billionaire. You heard me right. Billionaires would each get an additional tax cut every year of $3.5 million. That's 70 times what a typical family here in Scranton makes in 1 year. I have a better idea. As soon as I came to office, I expanded tax credits through the Affordable Care Act and saved millions of Americans another $800 per person per year on their health care premiums. Healthcare should be a basic right. Those tax credits are going to expire next year, though. And I want to make those tax credits permanent. The first thing I'll do if I'm reelected is make them permanent. Folks, and my plan calls for a minimum federal income tax of 25%, just 25% on billionaires. Well below the top rate, but fair, and they can afford it. You know how much money that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. $500 billion. Be a drop in the bucket for them. They wouldn't have to sell one single bit of their assets. And imagine what we could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care, paid leave, home care, elder care, and more, like every major country in the world has. Of all this is not only good for families, it creates jobs. It generates growth. It generates income. It generates economic vitality. Because guess what? When you have child care and you don't have to go out and hire somebody, you can go to work. I asked the Treasury Department to do a study. What's the effect of this? The effect of what I'm talking about is to increase economic growth. We have the most successful economy in the world today. But folks, how does Trump pay for these billionaire tax cuts? Well, Trump recently said Social Security and Medicare, quote, here's his quote, there's a lot you can do in terms of cutting, end of quote. Well, right on cue, the MAGA Republicans in Congress released their budget, which hasn't gotten nearly enough attention. The budget they proposed for next year would raise the retirement age in Social Security and would slash Medicare. Think about that for a second. MAGA Republicans want billionaires to pay less in taxes, want seniors to work longer before they can retire on Social Security benefits, and they want to cut Medicare. I got a better idea. Let's protect Social Security and Medicare and make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share in high taxes. And by the way, whether you're a liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever you are, think about it. We're not asking much. We're just asking for just basic fairness. You know, I've already been delivering real results in a fiscally responsible way. but I know not everyone's feeling it. Just the other day, a defeated-looking guy came up to me and asked if I could help. He was drowning in debt. I said, "I'm sorry, Donald, but I can't help you." Nothing I can do. Look, on a serious note, since I came to office, I've already cut the federal deficit. You know, all the stuff they talk about what we've done, and I'm going to be self-serving a little bit. Every objective alternative points out we've had the most successful economy of any major economy in the world so far. A lot more to do. But guess what? During the whole time, I've been able to cut the federal deficit at the same exact time by over $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And I signed a bipartisan budget deal that will cut another $1 trillion over the next decade as well. And I know what to cut. I want to cut the federal deficit even more by making big corporations and very wealthy begin to finally pay their fair share. We're not asking anything that's unusual. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 will pay an additional penny. I hope you're all able to make $400,000. I never did. But they're not going to pay an extra penny in federal taxes. That's a promise. Nobody. Not one penny. You know, I have to say, if Trump's stock in the True Social, his company, drops any lower, he might do better under my tax plan than his. Possible. Folks, look. I want to cut taxes on the hardworking folks here in Scranton and all across the country, and Claymont, where I've moved from Scranton to Claymont in Delaware, all across the country, like Amy's family. In fact, the child tax credit I extended during the pandemic put up to $300 per child in the pockets of around 40 million working families. And it literally cut child poverty in half. And we still reduce the deficit. That included helping 1.4 million families, nearly 2.4 million children right here in Pennsylvania. Republicans refused to extend it, which raised taxes on working families. I want to restore the expanded child care tax credit, because no child should live in poverty in this country. No child. We've got a lot more work to do, I know. The cost of housing is so important. I want to provide families like Amy's the $10,000 tax credit to help them buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Well, no, it's important. And by the way, it will grow the economy. When Trump was president in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profit and paid zero on federal income taxes. Well, guess what? I came along and took care of the sin. Not anymore. Thanks to a law that I wrote and signed, big corporations now have to pay a minimum. They should be paying more, a minimum of 15% tax. There's a start, but not enough. By doing that 15% tax, they paid for every program that people are now benefiting from, and still cut the deficit by $70 billion. And by the way, that 15% is still less than working people pay in federal taxes. It's time to raise the corporate tax minimum tax to at least 21%. So every big corporation finally has to pay their fair share. But you know, Trump and his MAGA friends want to get rid of the corporate minimum tax. With the same law, I gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drugs, which is why those of you who have diabetes need insulin. Instead of paying $400 a month, you're now paying $35 a month for insulin. I've been working on taking on Big Pharma my whole career. But guess what? If I put you on Air Force One, we flew out of here and you took a prescription you had from a drug company in America. I will take you any city you name, whether it's Berlin, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in Hungary, wherever it is, and you'll pay 40 to 60% less for that same exact prescription. No, not a joke. And by the way, when we in fact reduce, and there's much more to come in that healthcare proposal, that Medicare proposal. For example, seniors beginning in 2024, no matter how much their prescription drug costs are, they'll never have to pay more than $2,000 a year, no matter what. And by the way, companies will still make money. They'll still make a significant profit. Still make a significant profit. It helps reduce, and by the way, when we do this, it has a benefit, and that's already part of the law I passed. But guess what? Not only does it reduce the federal deficit, the help of the prescription holder, it reduces the federal debt. You know how much the first tranche of this has done? It's reduced the federal debt by $160 billion. Why? Because Social Security, Medicare does not have to pay out $400 a month. They're paying out $35 a month. But Trump's committed, if he's reelected, he gets elected again, he wants to get rid of the law and give Big Pharma the power to charge again whatever you want, which will also increase the deficit. Folks, are we going to let that happen? We can't. And that same law empowers the IRS to go after the super wealthy. You know what? It's amazing how we had passed legislation increasing the number of auditors. Guess who wanted them all cut? No, I'm not joking. Republicans. Why? Because it takes an awful lot of sophistication to be able to go through the tax returns of these billionaires to know what's going on. But while you work hard and pay your taxes, Trump wants to give his billionaire friends the power to avoid paying, even what they already owe, not what they should be paying. I know if you didn't know better, you think I'm making this up, but you can check it all out. Folks, he's coming for your money, your health care, and your Social Security. And we're not going to let it happen. Can't let it happen. Look, let me close with this. As you've observed, I can't hide it. Scranton fills me with enormous pride. My mom, who didn't live in Scranton permanently since 1954, I swear to God, whenever she was asked, no matter where we were, Mrs. Biden, where you live, where you from, she'd say, Scranton. Do you know anybody who's from Scranton that still doesn't brag about being from Scranton? Look, because I see here what I saw in Claymont, Delaware, where we moved. Used to be a big steel town with 4,000 workers, all gone now, although we're back with other growth. Claymont, Delaware, and what I see so many towns around America, a deep pride in your work, a deep pride in your family, a deep pride in your community, in your country. I've always thought the World War II monument downtown by City Hall says so much about Scranton. My Uncle Ambrose Finnegan, Boise Finnegan from North Washington, he served and died in World War II. Right after D-Day on Sunday, all four of my mother's brothers signed up to go fight in the military. In those days, you could do it, brothers could go off to war together. Fathers and brothers could do the same. In that war, everybody called him Boise Finnegan. Boise was a hell of an athlete, but Boise joined the Army Air Corps before there was an Air Force. And his name is etched on the monument down by City Hall. Here in Scranton, I grew up understanding we have many obligations as a country, but we only have, and I got in trouble for saying this from the time I was a young senator, we only have one truly sacred obligation. And that's to equip those we send to war and take care of them and their families when they come home or if they don't come home. I don't want to lose my temper in this, but I think about the statue in town now that I'm Commander-in-Chief. And I had them double-check my memory was correct that Uncle Bosie Ambrose J. Finnegan's name is etched on that statue. And I have to say, there are a lot of things that Donald Trump has said and done that I find extremely offensive. But one that offends me the most is when he refused as president to visit an American cemetery outside of Paris when he was president. Why? He said that those soldiers who gave their lives were, quote, was his quote, suckers and losers. Suckers and losers, he said it. Who the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is? These were heroes. These soldiers were heroes. Just as every American who served this nation. Believing otherwise, not alone is disqualifying for someone to seek this office. Thank God I wasn't standing next to him. As I've said, Donald Trump looks at the world differently than you and me. He wakes up in the morning in Mar-a-Lago thinking about himself, how he can help his billionaire friends gain power and control and force their extreme agenda on the rest of us. Listen to what he says. He says, quote, I'll be dictator on day one. Quote, I am your retribution. He promises, quote, a bloodbath if he loses. This guy denies January 6th. Listen to what he says, because you know he means it. I wake every morning thinking about how to make life better like you do for working and middle-class families here in Scranton and all across the country, where the power and the freedom rest with you and we the people. Maybe that's why millions of everyday folks are empowering our campaign. So far, 1.6 million people have contributed to our campaign, with 550,000 brand new this time around. And they're new contributors. But guess what? 97% of these contributions were under $200. It matters. You matter. My grandfather would tell me when I walked out the door in North Washington Avenue in Scranton, he'd yell, Joey, keep the faith, when I was a kid. My grandmother would yell, no, Joey, spread it. Spread it. Let's keep the faith. Let's spread it. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity if when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.